Hello, welcome to the Housing Sector Podcast, episode 6. In this episode, is to succeed to fail? Try saying that fast 6 times. Perhaps this is the biggest scandal to face the UK in years. Perhaps this is an unspoken secret. Perhaps this is the way it's been for years. Perhaps I'm completely wrong. Anyway, you make up your own mind. Episode 6 of the Housing Sector Podcast.
The Housing Sector Podcast, Episode 6, is to succeed to fail. Before we begin, some background about Ben.
Okay, let's start with a bit about me. Who am I to be judging and casting aspersions? Well, I'm a shared ownership tenant and have been since 2016. Beyond that, I'm someone who's worked very hard to ensure that companies provide great customer service. I've taken companies on transformative journeys where they've been very low customer relations and customer retention and taken them up to the top of the tree. But more importantly than that, I've worked with companies who are already great providers of customer service, but who understand that to stay and to remain at the top, they have to keep investing in their training, ensuring that their culture's right, and providing the end service, the user service, the customer experience. My last role was for a company that provided audits for many motor manufacturers. These motor manufacturers included the likes of Porsche, BMW, Lexus, Toyota. And we would have we had a group of auditors, and with the manufacturer we would sit down, and I won't go into details about each one because they have the right to my non-disclosure agreement, which we agreed on. But for example, some of them might be more focused on the showroom. They might want the whole customer journey from the moment the customer pulls up into the car park of the service station, the garage, or the sales centre. Was there a space? Were the hedges all cleared? They might want to understand what it was like to walk through the sales room. How long was it until they were greeted? Were the right posters up on the wall? Was the area clean and tidy? Were all the tiles spick and span? Other manufacturers were more interested in tools. So each quarter they would give us a list of tools, and the auditor would say, do you have your XYZ spanner available? Boom, and they would give them a time, and the time would come back, and they had to get it in 3 minutes or 5 minutes, and that tool had to be provided within the correct box. It might be that it had a calibration unit connected to it, and it had to have a certificate. All the data had to be up to date, and that was what they were interested in. So each quarter we would sit down and find out, what is it you're worried about? What is it you're looking for? What improvements do you want to watch? So we would understand the customer. Then the auditors would go out for 3 months and do the whole of the network. At the end of the quarter, I would compile all of that data, and we would then review that and do a presentation back to the client to say, look, here's where you're really good. Here's where you're failing. Here's something you could do better at. Now, I found when presenting these back to the senior leaders within the organizations, the first 5 or 10 minutes of me introducing myself and reintroducing myself if it was an ongoing customer, which most of them were, they weren't really interested. They'd be on their laptops, they'd be checking their phones, they'd be having little side chats. And we talked about how great the top ones were doing, all of the ones that were 100%, the 90%. And as we got lower down that list, we started to focus on some of the problem areas. And that's when the laptops would go down, the pens would be poised, and the attention would be focused, because they weren't interested in who's doing great. They already know who's doing great. That's a given. And they're usually, not always, but they're usually the top seller. But they know which service stations, which garages, which showrooms. They know which ones are already going to be at 100%. Where the interest comes was where the failures started to appear, where the faults. Now, it might be, as I said earlier, it could be that the grounds are being unkept. It could be that they were going through a redeck. One of our clients was going through a major redeck, so we knew for a few quarters, as those ones sort of getting, the ones that were last on the list to go through the sort of massive upgrade, we knew that their grounds would be slipping. We knew that their showrooms would be falling, the standards would be falling, and that's an acceptable and known understanding. The customer should still have that journey, whether it's the last day of your showroom before the redeck or the first day. That journey should still be seamless. So we needed to capture that information, but there was an understanding that things did fall through the cracks. As I got further down the list of the showrooms that were causing more and more problems, more attention was piqued. And the reason for this is you need to know where your weaknesses are. You need to know where you're failing. This is just common sense. They're the ones you want to work on. The expression, look after the pennies look after the pound. If you look after the small details, the problems, that's where your focus should be, and the rest will take care of itself. And if your 100% one suddenly drops to 50% or 40%, then there's an issue there. What caused that to happen? But as long as they're up there and fine, that's not a problem. So focus on your weaknesses. So you can only imagine my surprise when I started to report faults through my own landlord, Green Square Accord. I started saying, well, look, I've gone through the customer service desk. This hasn't happened. Here are all the email trails. Here are the other people we've copied on. Still not happening. This isn't going on. And it was just silenced. And as my journey with Green Square Accord has continued, the pushback has been more and more extreme, legal action, taking me to court. And of course, I found more and more residents that this is affecting. So it wasn't just us and our lifts and our fire doors that were an issue. There's many people. And yet they didn't want to hear about it. Now I found within this last month, they've removed the third stage of their complaint where it gets senior level review. So now the senior leaders are completely blindsided by anything. They have no idea where their failures are. We've already pointed out that the reporting stats that they share are often false because they're closed off. Issues, reports, complaints, they're all closed off at an early stage. So we know the statistics that are being reported and shared with the board are false. We now know that they have no senior leadership review of the complaints, so they've got no understanding of that. And anyone who dare to raise the issue is silenced and treated to all sorts of skullduggery, just to keep a lid on it. Now that poses the question: why? Why are we not concerned about where our failures are? Why are we not focused on the failures? Why does it have to go to the housing ombudsman before, and there have to be multiple housing ombudsman ones before the CEO even becomes involved? And I'm assuming that she is aware when a complaint goes to the housing ombudsman. Who knows? It seems to be sort of buried a head in the sand and hope that it goes. Well, this leads us on to what I suspect could be the biggest scandal the UK has faced since the last one, being the post office. And this one could be bigger. All right, let's look at it.
Funding grants and cheap loans.
Okay, so let's look at stage one. You want to build some houses. The government and the UK, we all need new houses. So you want to build a mixture of social housing, shared ownership, and you want to sell some houses. You're going to build a nice mixture, be it on an estate, a block of flats, yiddle yaddle. The first bit you got is going to get some grants, some funding for this. So, we've got the Affordable Homes Programme. I'm going to do some reading for you. I'll put it on the screen as well. The Affordable Homes Programme is a significant source of funding for building new social and affordable homes in the UK. Managed by Homes England, the AHP for 21 to 26 allocates 11.5 billion to build up to 180,000 affordable homes. The funding supports various types of affordable homes, including social rent, affordable rent, and shared ownership properties. Housing associations and other registered providers can apply for grants throughout the programme to cover the cost of new constructions or the acquisition and the refurbishment of existing properties. Okay, so there's 11.5 billion up for grabs already. Then we've got the Affordable Homes Guarantee, which gives a further 6 million. Home England initiatives. Homes England, the government's housing and regulations agency, supports the delivery of affordable and social houses through several initiatives. These include development loans ranging from $250,000 to 10 million for small and medium-sized builders, and funds targeted at local authorities to kickstart housing projects. There's lots of funds out there, so you can take advantage as a house builder of grants, funds and cheap loans to add to your stock to build new builds. When you build these, you get your reputational boost because you can celebrate the fact that you've handed over the keys to new homes, to new families who are eager to get their foot on the housing ladder, who need homes. And look, this is noble. There should be funding in place for people to build new homes. The country needs new homes, and Labour today, forgive me, it's flashed up, I haven't yet read it, are kickstarting a whole new housing building initiative. Great, we need new homes, no doubt about it. And there should be subsidies in place. But step one, we've already subsidised building, and when they come to making some profit out of these ones, the social rent they're going to profit from, The shared ownership ones, well, we're going to buy 25%, 50%. So they're going to profit from that sale. Plus, they've also still got a shared interest in there, which they gain rent from. So there's profit to be made from there. And some of these developments will be sold off. So there'll be private homes that are sold, which will again generate an income, generate some revenue for these house builders. Now, look, we're not doing it for free. We're not doing it for fun. So there has to be a profit outlay. So I'm not criticizing that, but it is important to note that step one of this process, they've already made some profit. Let's look at step two.
The service charge swindle.
All right, service charge. Now we're kicking the hornet's nest, being known as service charge abuse. It keeps going up year on year on year, and yet the return on the investment of the service charge is dwindling. The lack of maintenance on buildings, the fact that we constantly have to keep chasing up for things to be repaired, things that should be repaired as part of the service level agreement. So we pay a service charge. That service charge includes, for example, having lawns cut, having bushes trimmed, and perhaps in that agreement they're to do that 4 to 6 times a year. Okay, so when we agree that, we agree the service charge, we agree 6 times a year. Let's go 4 times a year to have the grass cut, and that will be done at such a rate times by 4, and that is built into our yearly cost, which is then divided by 12 or however it's paid. So we've got a service charge. What happens when they only come twice a year? We've paid for it 4 times and they're only coming twice a year now. Okay, this is where we start to get in murky water. I mean, if I was selling you 4 apples and only giving you 2, how many times are you going to come back? How many times am I allowed to do that before it's considered illegal? How many times until I have to refund you for those apples that I've not sold you? But of course, nobody's doing that with a service charge. And what about when it's lift maintenance? So we pay for lift maintenance. What about those homes that don't have lift maintenance? They don't have a lift, or the lift isn't maintained, or the lift is constantly breaking down, or the lift is at such a dangerous thing that nobody dare use it. First-hand experience here. So we're paying for you to keep the lift serviced, and you pay a third-party contractor sometimes to come and look after the lift. So if the lift isn't being maintained, when do we start getting the refund on that money that we've paid? We certainly don't get it at the end of the year. So at the end of the year, housing associations don't go, okay, we only cut the grass twice. We said we'd do it 4 times. Refund that. Well, their lift was out of order 12 months. So, although it was working 3 weeks out of the 4 weeks of each month, that's 12 weeks where it wasn't. So actually we can work out a figure to refund our residents. That doesn't happen. So the service charge really is the gift that keeps on giving. It is the cash cow that can keep being milked, and it is exploited. And it's become so that the backlash is now becoming so vocal that it is the real divide between residents and the providers. And let's face it, you're making money out of it. There's no other way to look at it. If you're charging for a service you're not delivering, and you're not refunding what you don't deliver on, you're profiting for a service you're not providing. So you've profited at step 1, and we can be fair on that and go, okay, all right, yeah, we need new homes. Perhaps that's the trade-off. Service charge is becoming a little bit untenable. Hang on a minute. You're charging the fee, not providing the service, and not refunding the money. So you're definitely profiting at step 2. Let's have a look at what happens at step 3.
Selling properties that have deteriorated due to prolonged neglect.
Okay, so what inevitably happens when you don't provide the level of service that we expect for the service charge, be it maintaining the integrity of the building, fixing issues when they're reported so they don't become bigger issues. When you fail to provide that level of support, when you fail to maintain the buildings as part of your service level agreement, the inevitable happens. Homes fall into disrepair. Well, after years of being left in this state and falling further and further into disrepair through systemic and substantial failures of management, if you like, failing to adhere to the basic levels of their core service provisions, these homes will become dilapidated. And then what are the options? Well, you sell them off. They're being sold off now. Let's have a look at some news articles. Now, I apologise that a lot of these Green Square Accord. This scandal has only come to light due to my own involvement with Green Square Accord. They were downgraded by Moody's financially because they didn't have enough headroom. So they've then gone, well, we're going to sell off stock then. That's what we'll do. So anything that is a burden to us, anything that's going to cost too much to fix, we'll sell it off. Let's have a look at some of these rolling stories.
From the BBC News, local legend vicar faces losing home of 20 years. Jonathan Holmes, BBC News, West of England, published 26th June 2024. A vicar described by her community as a local legend faces losing her home of 2 decades after it was put up for sale. Claire Southgate, a vicar in Box, near Bath, has lived in the house for 20 years. But the housing association is now selling it. Ms. Southgate, who cannot drive as she has epilepsy and can only manage a few miles by bus, may have to pull out of her volunteer jobs if she is rehoused outside of Box. Housing Association Green Square Accord said it is committed to supporting Ms. Southgate through the process. Ms. Southgate also works as a classroom assistant at the village school and has served the people of the village through her volunteer roles for more than 30 years. She is what is called a self-supporting vicar at St Thomas, a Becket church, which is a voluntary role, so she is not entitled to church accommodation. More than 1,400 people have signed a petition to keep Miss Southgate in the village. Speaking about receiving the letter from Housing Association Green Square Accord, Ms. Southgate said she couldn't speak really. "I could go to work and do the routine things, but I couldn't talk about it to anyone," she added. Coventry residents' heartbreak at homeless flats plan, published 17th August 2023. By Caroline Gall and Ellie Brown, BBC News, West Midlands. Residents of a sheltered housing complex have been asked to leave so the building can be used for homeless families instead. Staff at Ribbon Court in Foleshill helps residents over 55 with extra care and assistance, but they must now leave by 20th of October. Provider Green Square Accord said not enough people lived there and the scheme was not financially sustainable. Resident Roberta Clark said it was heartbreaking. "I had to phone my GP because my anxiety levels have been going up and up. I am scared I am going to have a heart attack," she said. October 20th is no time. How on earth are they going to find a home for nearly 45 residents? Those living there were sent warning letters last week before receiving Section 21 notices on Wednesday. There are between 35 and 45 residents, including a person in their 80s and people with disabilities.
Now, look, I don't suppose it's just Green Square Accord doing this. In fact, I suspect it happens a lot. I suspect it's common practice. And look, to a certain extent, it makes sense. There are homes which you can no longer fix. It's no point. You're throwing good money after bad. I get it. But when you've systemically allowed these houses to fall into disrepair, and then you sell them, and then you uproot families from friends, from villages, from the hub of their community, when you take them out of that and you make a profit from this land. And let's look at a building that was, the hurried removal of families from Clare House in Bow. Now, these guys were given 48 hours notice. They'd been reporting issues, saying, look, the fire systems aren't safe, fire exits aren't working. It had all been reported, and then suddenly Clarion at the time knocked on their doors and gave them 48 hours and they were all uprooted. The stress and the traumatic, the trauma that would have caused for children, families alike is just unforgivable. And of course, what happens to this building? Well, rather than it being a social housing, it is now part of a leafy London, Bow. It's a lovely suburb and you've profited from it. So we've profited from grants. Social housing providers profited from the grants and the initiatives and the loans. They've profited from the service charge. They've profited from the sale of buildings that they've allowed to decline and fall into disrepair. So is this not a scandal? I mean, I thought it was pretty bad when I accused it of being a Ponzi scheme. So it's a Ponzi scheme that all the money that they make from the new builds spills into the fixing of older stock, which is it's not a Ponzi scheme because people aren't actually profiting from it, but it's that same pyramid structure. We get this money and we use it to subsidize the people at the bottom, the homes that are falling into disrepair. We haven't been able to build those new homes, so we're not able to maintain a few, and that's been part of the problem. The Ponzi scheme is starting to collapse, but a Ponzi scheme, be it that it's just bad management, but this is actually profiting at all 3 points of the puzzle and claiming OBEs and bragging about how great you're doing. And in fact, you're breaking communities, because when those houses fall into disrepair, they're slums. They create crime. They create a blemish on our communities. They cause a rundown in the schools. Suddenly people going from jobs who live in certain areas are penalised against because that postcode is known to be a slum. And we know this. We know that this economic cleansing of our communities is wrong, and yet still social housing providers are getting away with it. What can we do? Well, we need robust oversight, that's for sure. We need more government intervention. We need our community groups to come together. We need, unfortunately, vocal residents like myself and like many others to stand up and go, look, this isn't right. You can't do this. This is immoral. You're putting profits before people. And this is from many of you who claim to have the customer at the heart of everything you do. Remember, we're not customers, we're residents. We'll be customers when you start providing a level of service that we can go, actually, I feel like a customer. Most of us just feel like a cash cow. Most of us just feel exploited. And my shared ownership, that in a way is an investment in my old age, my retirement, perhaps my end of life care, you are eroding through your negligence. And then when you come to sell it off, I'll get the value of our bit, which will probably be next to nothing by the time the building's been run down into a slum. And that has a direct result on my end of life care. Hopefully me and my wife will be able to bum around the world in our camper van, eating apples and drinking wine. Wouldn't that be lovely? But if the funding's not going to be there because you've already exploited it, you've already made it worthless, and then you've sold it off to one of your buddies who's going to build a new block of flats and it's all going to start again, leaves a bad taste in my mouth. So we need robust oversight. We need prime ministers and members of the MPs. We need them to get involved and say, no, this has to stop. If you're going to build homes in our community, we understand that you're going to make money, and we're all right for you to make money. No one expects you to do this out of the goodness of your heart, but you mustn't be exploiting the communities that you're set up to support. Look, I got on a bit of a rant there. It's the last thing I wanted to do. Let's close this podcast off.
In conclusion and upcoming.
Okay, so there you have it. Perhaps the biggest scandal since the post office, perhaps bigger than the post office scandal. I suspect, like the post office scandal, it will largely go ignored until ITV or Netflix or someone decide to make a documentary or a drama film of the week. It takes something like that to naturally resonate with the zeitgeist and get that lift off that we need. Who will play me, I wonder? Well, it'll have to be Samuel L. Jackson. Look, we've got some more news coming up. I don't want this housing sector podcast to be a offshoot of my Green Square Accord resident support site. Now, in all honesty, and to be transparent, I have a lot of Green Square Accord issues. First of all, I'm one of their residents, although they'll deny it. But I have a support site which is getting more and more traffic. I get on average between sort of 7 and 10 reports a week from people who've been raising issues with Green Square Accord, who haven't got the result that they deserve, that they pay for. So I naturally have a lot of Green Square Accord issues that come to me naturally through that website. But like the housing sector website, I don't want this to become aren't Green Square Accord appalling? Because they are, but I don't want this website and this podcast to be that. So because of that, and because of the amount of traffic, and because I'm a very reasonable man, unless I'm provoked, and they have provoked me this week, you won't want to miss dun 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 the GSA Way, a new podcast which is coming hopefully towards the end of the week, just putting the finishing touches to it and all sorts. We've got a theme tune, the whole lot. You will love it, and that really is going to be focused on the GSA Way, the Green Square Accord way, what they do, what they don't do, how they exploit, bully, and how it's just become untenable for them to claim to be these great housing providers. So look, we'll get that set up. I'll get a link there. It will be on this channel. It will be probably come up on a I don't know, hopefully midweek. So you'll get the regular housing sector one on Monday and Tuesday, and then the Green Square Accord one perhaps Wednesday, Thursday, time permitting. I'll figure out a timetable for it. But look out for that one. If you have any questions, if you've got anything that says, actually, Ben, you are way off on this one, buddy, then please let me know in the comments or reach out to me at ben@housingsector.co.uk. I'd love to engage and find out more. I say I am not an expert in this field. I only say it as I see it, as a resident. So if you think I'm off on the wrong track, if I'm barking up the wrong tree, please let me know. Let's open this up. Come on here. It's your sector. If you're a resident who feels perhaps I've got it right and you want to air your grievances, then please do get in touch through the comments or on the website, however you like. Okay, that's it for this week. Thank you very much indeed for your time. It's been a bit of a ranty one. Sorry about that. Look, I much as always appreciate your love and support. Traffic on the site has peaked again, so it's getting a lot of traffic. It really has lifted at another stage, so thank you very much indeed for that. It's much appreciated. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe and share. It really does help. I know we get tired of all these YouTube videos going, it really helps, but it really does. And if you're watching it or downloading the audio for the podcast, please also do a like or rate there. And if you don't like it, we'll rate it badly. I don't care. It's, I'm interested in honesty. It's not about, if you don't like it, then you don't like it. Then we can figure it out. Let's work together. I'm interested in getting to the bottom of the problems so we can start to solve them. That's what the housing sector website was set up for. That's what this podcast is an offshoot on. Okay, that's it for now. Thank you very much indeed. Have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Housing Sector podcast. We hope you found this episode insightful and engaging. Please like, subscribe, and share with your friends and colleagues. Your support helps us continue to bring you the latest updates and discussions on housing issues. Stay tuned for our next episode, and don't forget to follow us on our social media sites for more content and updates.